Hey everybody, this is saxophonist Gerald Albright, and you're watching Quencie on Studio Q.
Studio Q show, now you know.
Well, welcome to another edition of Studio Q. I am sitting with saxophone extraordinaire Gerald Albright. He has a new album out called G, right?
Yes, absolutely, Quencie.
And I can't wait to get into talking to him about him, his career, the sax, the bass, the piano that he left behind. So
You've been reading, I see. Okay, that's beautiful.
Well, first of all, congrats on your new album, G. I mean, it was released September 30th, correct?
Correct.
And
yes.
And you had only a total of 7 people who worked on this album. So talk about it. Talk about getting it out the gate.
Well, I'm going to say this only because I saw the movie last night, Magnificent Seven. It was the Magnificent Seven on this project. Handpicked people who I thought would be very instrumental and key in fulfilling my vision on the project. And so I chose a small ensemble of musicians that would make the record sound huge. I'm into huge productions, and I like, group horns and strings and all that kind of stuff. So that's what we went for on this project, G.
The Magnificent Seven. So how were you able to get such big sound out of just a small group?
Well, technology plus I'm old school. See, I used to do recording sessions in the Los Angeles area, and back in the day, they used to have real horn sections of 6 to 9 guys playing on a record and all together at one time in a given studio. And so that's what I'm used to. I'm used to that big sound. If I had to describe this project, I would say it's Earth, Wind and Fire meets Tower Power meets Maze, featuring Frankie Beverly. So it's that kind of thing. It's old school. It's basically an R&B record. It's not a smooth jazz record because I come from contemporary jazz, quiet storm, more of the urban side of the music. I like that funk, So
and we feel that R&B. You know what I mean? I'm giving Roland Martin dap when he said, this is the kind of music you play when you on the road and feeling it. I mean, it was just great, upbeat, just R&B love. I mean, after 17 CDs, what makes this album different?
Well, what we did on this particular project, it's being channeled differently. I just started a record company, Bright Music Records, in the past year. And also in the past year and a half, I became self-managed. So I manage myself. Basically, I'm taking control of my career. Mm-hmm. And so that takes away any of the constraints that sometimes a big record company can put on an artist. Okay, we need to do a record like this. It can't be too funky. It can't be too edgy. We just took all the filters off and on this project gave the audience what I thought was 200% Gerald.
Now, what is the difference? It is 200% Gerald. What is the difference between you managing yourself and you being managed? What's that feel like right now?
Well, it's definitely more work. Obviously, I'm wearing more hats. I'm writing more checks now because I'm the guy now. You know what I'm saying? I'm the record company. I'm the manager. I'm everything. In conjunction to what I was doing before I made those changes. So the workload is greater, but the reward is greater in that I see everything that's going on day to day now, and nothing gets missed, and if by chance the vision falls short of what it should be, which I've already claimed through God that it's going to be big,
yes.
Then it's on me. It's not on somebody else. You know what I'm saying? So it's a pleasure to just, after 17 records and after 3 to 4 plus decades, be able to grab hold of my career and move forward in this fashion,
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I mean, especially in this world of social media, you do have a lot of power than, back in the day when we didn't have the technology available.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and we're using that social media too, girl. We are in a big way.
I love it. I love it. You changing with the times, that's free in social media. I mean, it's not free, but I mean, it's just, so wide stream that you can get so much out there quickly, like live video and, just everything where the fans can really, touch you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, you remade Avant song, Read Your Mind. What was it about that song that made you put it on this album?
Well, I love the song initially. My co-producer, Chris Davis, who also is the main keyboardist in my touring group, brought the song to me. And again, it had that R&B flavor to it, and I like what Avant did with it, but we wanted to take it and make it more Gerald. So once again, you have the big horns, you have the big tenor lead, and I thought that Chris, we call him Big Dog, Chris Davis is his formal name. He did some wonderful production on the keyboards, and so we enjoyed this, and it's one of the most popular of the record,
Yeah,
so
I love it.
a lot of people have been saying, they really digged it, the rendition that we did.
No, I love that song, and I love, your interpretation of it. Also, you said that Michael McDonald is one of your favorite vocalists, and you have him and Dougie Fresh, which is like completely opposite. Tell us about them on the album.
Well, now see, this is one of those things that maybe a major record label wouldn't have gone with. If I had come to them and said, okay, I want to have on this side Michael McDonald, but then I want to have some beatbox and some rap from Dougie Fresh, they might have said, well, I think that's taking some chances, taking some liberties, but that's what I saw. That's what I heard. Mm-hmm. And so Michael McDonald is a longtime friend. We have this mutual admiration thing. I love what he does. He loves what I do. And at some point, we're going to be on stage together. We've already talked about it. Me and Dougie Fresh, I've known him for years. I first met him in Compton, California, years ago, back when I had hair. And it was actually a tribute to Isaac Hayes that afternoon. Okay. And both he and I performed as a tribute to Isaac, God rest his soul. And so we befriended one another that day. We kind of hung out. And through all these years, we've kind of, seen each other in airports or at industry functions. And finally, I saw him on a jazz cruise a couple of years ago. And I said, hey, man, we got to work together. We got to do something. And I know, you're on this side of the fence in terms of your genre, and I'm on the other side, but we got to put it together somehow. And here we are on a tune called G and Dougie. And he did a wonderful job on that particular song.
Yeah, because I'm never going to pick up a Gerald Albright album and think I'm going to see Dougie Fresh. So that was a great surprise.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And, the interesting thing, Dougie is just as excited about it as I am because, we took something and we build a bridge between the two genres that we do. Mm-hmm. And hopefully he and I will be able to share the stage soon, too. I mean, we're already talking about maybe doing a video on that song and everything. So
nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's nice. Now, I know you've known Patrice Rushen a long time. You guys went to high school. You was working at Woolworth when you got the call to go on tour with her. The big break.
That part.
What you say? I'm sorry, I laughed over you. What you say?
No, it's all good. It's a fact. It's a fact, yeah.
I want to know, what was that tour like? What did it teach you just about the music industry? Because it was your entree into touring and everything.
Well, Patrice and I went to high school together. She was a couple of years ahead of me. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest, I didn't go to college to work at Woolworth's department store.
Of course not.
You know what I'm saying? So
I'm trying to inspire some people. I'm trying to inspire some people with the great Gerald Albright history.
Exactly. Exactly. So, here I am, assistant manager trainee at Woolworth's department store. And I was that guy. But for some reason, the boss liked my voice. And she said, well, you got to do all the sound bites for when people enter the store. They'll hear you saying, something like, there's 4-ply polyester wind tuck yarn for 59 cents. I was that guy when you walked in Woolworth.
You was already entertainment. You was already promoted.
He was already trying to another thing, voiceover work or something. But it was cool. But I was working 48 hours a week and not making much money, fresh out of college. And about 8 months into the job, Patrice Rushen calls, and this is when Forget Me Nots, which I played the tenor sax solo on the original track.
Wow.
This is when Forget Me Nots was like at its apex in terms of popularity.
Mm-hmm.
So she put a band together for this tour, and she called me and said, "Hey, I want you to be in the horn section. Are you interested?" And I said, "Absolutely." And so I told my boss at the time, Mrs. Hutchins, I said, "I got to go. I can't give you 2 weeks notice. There's no way I can give you 2 weeks notice." And she understood.
Of course.
She understood. And next thing I know, I'm in rehearsals with Patrice Rushen to go on a 2 or 3 month tour. So that's how that all came about.
That's amazing. What did that tour teach you, though, about just like, you know, you done went from college to Woolworth and now you're out doing your thing. What did it teach you?
Well, it taught me how to perform in front of an audience. At that point in my life, I was a sideman, but it taught me how to blend and play with other musicians. It taught me how to conduct myself on the road. I mean, being on the road is a whole nother thing from being at home. And so, you know, how to be at sound check on time, how to be at lobby call on time. So it got my punctuality in check. The money that I made on the road, it taught me how to budget, you know, road versus sending money home to pay the bills and all that kind of stuff. So it was a multifaceted experience.
Yeah.
And then on top of all that, Quencie, it was the blessing of playing with some of the best musicians that were there at the time.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it was a real celebration.
I mean, you know, to start out playing with the best, that already tells you who you are too, you know?
Well, thank you. I'm still trying to get it right. You know how it is.
That's them humble people, them humble folks. So I know that you became interested in the saxophone, but you weren't really interested in the piano. What was it that you didn't like about the piano, and what was it about the sax that turned you on?
Well, I think when I go back to age 8, which, Quincy, that wasn't that long ago, you know, I think it was the difference of my parents telling me that I was going to take piano lessons versus me saying to my private teacher that I wanted to play saxophone.
Gotcha.
You know, it's a difference when somebody's telling you that you're going to do something and then you have a passion for something else. And but it was the insight of George Turpo, who was my teacher at the time, who went to my parents and said, you know, Gerald, back then I was called Jerry. Most people from the old neighborhood know me as Jerry.
Okay.
He says, Jerry is not interested in piano. We need to try something else. And he was the one that actually suggested saxophone.
Oh.
And unannounced at the next lesson, he brought a saxophone to the lesson. I'm thinking I'm going to be practicing piano, but he said, no, we're going to do something different today. And he put the sax together and put the mouthpiece on the sax and showed me how to, well, at that time, make a squeak out of it. And I've been squeaking for the last 4 or 5 decades. You know what I'm saying? You just liked
it, huh? You just liked it. Just liked it. I mean, what would you tell your 8-year-old self about music? Just go with what you liked. Is this going to take you a far way? What would you tell your younger self just about music and about instruments?
Well, I think the first message I would tell myself at 8 is go for your passion. You know, go for what you want to do in life. I think God gives everybody a fingerprint and their own road to whatever their life is supposed to be. And I'm one of those guys that thinks that our life is already planned out when we're born. We're just living through the chapters of it.
Oh,
you know,
wow.
So basically I would tell my 8-year-old self, you know, stick to your guns. There were a lot of people along the way that thought I should be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever. And I'm like, that's not where I am. I love music. This is what makes me happy. And I stuck with it. And were my parents worried at a certain point? Yes. You know, because music is one of those highly competitive fields.
Yeah.
And when I got out of college, it wasn't like an overnight success thing. You know, sometimes I was looking at the first of the month, you know, a week up from the first of the month. And I'm like, how the heck am I going to pay rent?
Right.
You know, but it worked out. Somehow I would get a gig. It's favor. That's all it is. But I would get a gig that was just enough to pay that rent and maybe pay the light bill and get a couple of groceries and carry me to the next month. And I just stuck with it. And here we are today. I'm still trying to pay bills, but there we go.
But the great thing is you've been doing it for 40 years now. You know, you're good at it now.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, we're trying to make some headway here now. It's all good. It's a blessing. It really is.
Now, you said you really love to, you know, get involved with the audience and you want them to be entertained. How difficult is it for you to do with the sax versus like a vocalist, you know?
Well, you know, they've said for many, many years that the saxophone is the closest instrument to the human voice in terms of the way you can do inflections and alter the melody and the embellishments of the melody and everything. And so my whole life mission is to have a conversation with the saxophone. And, you know, I see a lot of young players, a lot of saxophone players now that come out and they have all this energy and they try to put all these notes into like one solo. They just start out at 99 miles an hour. But I've learned over the years, sometimes it's what you don't play that may be more important than what you do play. You know, sometimes you have to have the silence within the conversation versus all notes, you know. Case in point, listen to an old Miles Davis record. Miles would come out, you know, the band would be swinging and Miles might play one note on the trumpet, but that note in that given time space was more important than 50 notes that he could have played. And you hear that one note and you go, oh man, that's what he should have hit right there, you know. So that's the kind of stuff you learn over time. So I just love having the conversation with the horn. And my greatest compliment after all these years is to be front and center on stage and have people be moved by what we do, as though I were a vocalist or something on stage. I think that is the prize, and that's the mission that I'm on, you know, to make people feel better.
Yeah, and you do that every time you put that to your lips, man. You're making us feel better playing that music every time.
Thank you.
What is it that you enjoy about touring? Like, how does it feed you?
Well, I always say that I do the shows for free, but I get paid for the travel. You know, the touring, that's our playground. We can do that all day long. Again, it's the reaction from the people. I mean, when the people walk in the venue, you don't know who has weight on their shoulders. You don't know what kind of day they had. You don't know what kind of storms they're going through. And for that 75 or 90 minutes, it's our job to make them feel better going out of the venue than when they walked in. So if we accomplish that mission, that's the enjoyment right there. And then touring with some of the best musicians all the time that I've been able to tour with, that's like the A-team. You know, you go out there, that's a musician's playground, and you never know how the show is going to go because jazz is endless. It's endless improvisation. So when we go out there, we never, if we're playing on a Wednesday night, we're not going to do the same thing we did Tuesday night because the approach might be different. We might be in different moods on Wednesday night than we were on Tuesday night. So that's, you know, that anticipation of the spontaneity in the presentation is part of the prize, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and I mean, that would just be just fun in general. Like, how is he going to be feeling? How am I going to play off of him? And, you know, the energy that you guys are bringing. You guys have your own conversation within the concert.
Exactly.
Now, how does being in the industry for like 30, 40 years impact the way you approach making music today? Like, how does it impact you? You know, because you've got so much years of experience.
Well, I use each level of that experience in anything that I do now. So I think the impact is greater. I'm always striving to be better. You know, I always say, well, we're professional musicians, but we're still students. And you never learn too much about music because music is infinite, you know. So I'm always learning. I'm always trying different things, different formulas. And you know, to be able to do something passionately that I've been wanting to do for many, many years and still be marketable and still have an audience out there, that's a win-win for me. You know, so I'm in a really, really good space, you know, at this point in my career.
Well, I want to know, what's the biggest change in the music industry that you hate?
Well, the demise of radio, the demise of retail for jazz records. We just don't have the outlets and the platform that we used to have. Back in the, let's say, 80s and 90s, we were deemed R&B artists. So we would chart on the R&B charts. We were doing videos on BET and all these other cable stations, just like, the other vocalists who were R&B artists, you know what I'm saying? So I missed that part of it. And consequently, because our platform has shrunken, then, well, the budgets for artists have shrank. So there's not a lot of money to get a lot of things done. So now you have to be inventive. Now you have to be resourceful and approach it from more of a grassroots approach, So that's what we've done. Some musicians during the process have given up. They were just like, hey, this is not the industry that it used to be. I'm going to go into something else. Well, me and some other colleagues had a different vision of that. We wanted to keep this thing going. It's our responsibility to keep this wonderful music going. So, so we're just working within the parameters that we have.
Yeah, because I think you said something like, now the live gigs are like retail places now. It's like a one-stop shop because the shrinking of everything else in the industry.
It is. It really is. I mean, we still have some retail outlets where we can get some units sold, some mom and pop stores, things like that. But really, it's about inspiring the people at the concerts and then running out to the lobby and signing autographs and moving those CDs there. Which I love that anyway, because I get with the people and I love that interaction.
Yeah.
But I wish we could couple that with a bigger platform, not only domestically, but globally, to sell a product,
Yeah, because people love your music. They love jazz music. So you guys deserve a bigger platform. Now, Kanye West has his Yeezys, but you have the Gerald Albright signature series of saxophones. I mean, what does that feel like? I think that is amazing. Yeah, I'll have the Gerald Albright, please. Yes. I
mean, well, and speaking of, this is called the GA5 Alto. We've been selling this for several years now. It's a wonderful company called Cannonball Musical Instruments out of Sandy, Utah. I just left from there a few days ago. I picked up a new horn. We're constantly redesigning things and innovating things with the horn. And so this particular horn right here is a beast. It really plays well. And I'm going to Rehoboth, Delaware this weekend, and I'm going to perform with it on stage for the first time. So,
nice.
So we're doing some exciting things. We have a signature alto, tenor, and soprano saxophone, and they're selling very, very well, both internationally and domestically. So we're happy about that.
Now, did you ever think that you would have a series of sax that named after you?
I did not, and the way it went down, it was just favor. It was just really favor. There's a big convention called the NAMM Convention. It's one of the biggest music conventions. It's held right there in Anaheim, California, every January. And years ago, I was doing some other gigs and stuff in association with the convention. And I had just finished my day, and I had strapped my old alto on my back and had my little bag. I'm walking out of the venue, and I hear a guy say, "Gerald," and I look over my shoulder, and it's the owner of this company. His name is Tevis Lockett. And he says, "Hey, I really enjoy your playing. Have you tried our horns before?" And I said, "Well, no, I haven't." He says, "Well, you want to take a minute and try a few things?" And I had some time. So, I tried his horns, and they played great. I was like, "Man, where have you guys been?" And stemming from that initial conversation, we kept in touch, and I initially started out endorsing the product, and then that parlayed into actually being a business partner with the company. So we're elated, and they're wonderful people to work for and work with, and and we're constantly redesigning and innovating the horns to optimize what they do.
Well, I mean, that's just top of the game talk right there, you know. Just to have it, then you're like, and then we're redesigning it, we're innovating, we're making it even better. Yeah, that sax is a beast. I can tell if you playing it.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. It's a fun ride, you know.
Now I know your daughter sings, Selina, right? She sings. And you sang "Sun Comes Up." You didn't sing. You did, the music with "Sun Comes Up" with her. You guys did a project together on her album. And
right.
what I want to know is that you said she was singing around the house, singing Mariah Carey and Whitney, and you would take her to the studio and learn, teach her how to stack vocals and stuff. What do you see in her that came from you?
Well, I just laugh because now the stage is kind of like father-daughter quality time. She does a lot of the festivals that I perform on in her own right. She's not necessarily performing with me. She's doing her own shows. Now daddy has to wait in line to work with her. It's the flip. You know what I'm saying? But it's so cool. I see some of her gestures on stage. I see how she's putting her marketing and promotion together. And it's a lot like what I would do. Mm-hmm. I see the way she interacts with people, and I just chuckle because it's kind of like what I would do. I mean, that's a piece of me out there.
Yeah.
And after all these years, it's just nice to have that oneness with her mm-hmm. as a family member in the music,
Yeah.
My son, who is her younger brother, Brandon, who, by the way, shot all the photos for the new record, and mm-hmm. he's going to be shooting my video. He's into cinematography. He likes to be behind the camera.
Nice.
He plays drums, he plays bass, he plays a little trumpet, but he did that back in the day, and he decided, like I did when I was younger, to take a different departure and do something else, Mm-hmm. So he still loves the music, but it's artistically from the camera.
Yeah.
He likes to document it from the camera. So to have the family this close to me and mirror my passion mm-hmm. is just the ultimate thing for a dad,
I'm just guessing. What is it like being on stage performing with your daughter?
Sometimes I can get through it. Sometimes I can't without tearing up.
Oh.
I've been on stage and we would just vibe, and I get a little soft. I had to man up,
Yeah.
I had to man up. But sometimes I get the glassy eye, because I know the whole story leading up to that.
Yeah. But I mean, it must be a thrill for her too to have seen you perform, her whole life, and then get to join you and do what she does.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying this just because I'm her dad. She's a real professional, and she is great at what she does.
Mm-hmm. Great voice.
And it comes effortless to her. When I call over to my studio to do, let's say, lead or background vocals, it doesn't take her long to do them. I mean, she already has the arrangement in her head. She comes and she layers the vocals, or she'll do the lead and say, "Okay, Dad, let's go to lunch."
There you go. There you go. Working with the greats again.
Working with the greats, But I usually have to buy lunch, so we don't have to work that hard.
Well, you still dad. Come on.
Always.
Well, I want to talk about some other greats that you work with. I'm a huge Whitney Houston fan, and I know you worked with her. What was that like? Rest in peace, Whitney.
Rest in peace, Whitney. I miss her so much. She was my first mega pop artist gig back in the early 90s. And I was so blessed to work with her. Whitney would do things vocally on stage. I would be playing behind her. And sometimes I would lose myself in the music listening to her, wow. When I should be concentrating on my stuff, because she would bring it 200% every night. And I just really miss her vocals. One of the greatest that we've had the pleasure of being on the same planet with for the time that she was here. Whitney was a special, special flower. And, we have great vocalists today who sing their hearts out. They sing like a bird. But you go back to Whitney, I don't know. She could be probably the greatest of all time.
Seriously,
Me,
because you felt the anointing too. It wasn't just her voice. It was the magic that came through it.
You hit the nail right on the head. I have to say that there's a lot of vocalists out there now, no names mentioned, that they have all the right notes, they sing in tune, but you don't feel it here. Mm-hmm. It's like textbook vocals. But like you say, Whitney had that anointing that just made you move in your seat, and you go, "Oh no, she didn't sing that note. She did not sing that note." And I miss that. I really miss that. But she's singing in heaven right now, and I'm sure that choir is the ultimate right now.
Oh yeah, she's singing with some greats, because there's some greats up there with her.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you've also performed with Phil Collins and Anita Baker. Like, how does that add to just your experience level? Like, Whitney was your first, but then you went on to the other greats as well.
Well, when you see music on that level, when you are sharing the stage with Phil Collins and you're playing for 70, 80,000 people.
Yes.
And you're playing for an audience where they're all packed in there like sardines, and you cannot see the end of the audience. It's just like a sea of people. Mm-hmm. That puts things on another level, and that inspires you to think big.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you look at Phil Collins and you go, wow, all these folks came to see this one guy.
I know.
80,000 people came to see this one guy do his songs for an hour or two on stage. That's power right there. Mm-hmm. And when you tour with a guy like that, all that can do is just enhance your vision, enhance your outlook on music. And so anything that I do, as you can hear in the new project G, it's on a big scale. Yeah. 7 people in there, but it sounds like it's 700 on the record, because that's just the way I hear stuff, Quencie, So those experiences are priceless for me.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you hear it that way, because we get to benefit from it, We get to benefit.
It's my absolute honor. Thank you.
Now, we are only 30 days, less than 30 days from the election, and you had the honor of actually playing the saxophone with Bill Clinton. Okay, so I want to know, okay, you got a basketball team, saxophonist. Okay, is he your 5th man or is he your 6th man?
Bill would probably be on the bench. As a president, he could be the coach. Okay. But as a sax player, I might bring him. I might bring him on the court maybe once a week. You know what I'm saying?
We don't want your legs to cramp up, Bill.
But I will say this, I was surprised at how well he plays, considering that he was the leader of our nation. He didn't have time to practice saxophone, but the first thing that was interesting is that he picked my saxophone up after I had just finished playing it. And I didn't clean the mouthpiece, but he just jumped right on it. I'm like, okay, this brother trusts me, man.
That was the breaking news right there, first off.
Yeah, exactly. So that meant he really had a comfort zone with me, because I don't play on everybody else's horn. Give me something to sterilize the mouthpiece first, what I'm saying? But
Bill was comfortable.
He was very comfortable. And the interesting thing, I have to say this about Bill, and I call him Bill. Most people call him President Clinton, which he truly deserves. But on the level that I got a chance to meet him and talk to him, you forget that he's the leader of the free nation. Mm-hmm. He's just Bill. Mm-hmm. And, it was an unexpected thing when we played together. It was over at Kenny Babyface Edmonds' house. He was doing a Democratic fundraiser for Bill Clinton's second term.
Okay.
And so Bill is there, and there's probably 100 people there. It was a $10,000 a plate dinner. Mm. and Shaka Khan performed. Greg Fillinganes was the musical director. Lionel Richie performed. And we were the house band. You know, I was doing all the sax solos and stuff in the background. President Clinton was sitting down front, and he nudges the person next to him and says, you know, that's Gerald Albright right there. He's a great saxophonist. And I'm overhearing this. I'm like, I didn't even know he knew my music, right?
Wow.
So after the event, he comes straight to me because I'm playing these, at the time, these white saxophones with gold keys, and they really made a statement.
Nice.
And he came over to say hello and inquire about these saxophones, and he's like, you know, Gerald, you sounded great. You sounded great, man.
I love your impersonation.
I'm trying to get as close as I can. And so I say, what, thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that. He says, tell me about these horns. And so I started telling him about the horns and what they were made out of and blah, blah, blah. And as I'm talking, he's picking up the tenor sax, you know, and he's kind of looking at it, and he's pressing the keys. You know, and I'm still talking and describing the horn. And next thing I know, he takes the neck strap and he puts it over his head, you know. And I said, well, man, this cat is getting ready to play my horn. And so now he takes the mouthpiece cap off the mouthpiece and he starts to play. So now the Secret Service, they were actually supposed to be ushering him out to another event. They're saying over their lavaliers, they're saying the president is not ready to leave yet. The president is not ready to leave yet. We don't know what to do. We're kind of running late, and we don't know what to do. But so now he's playing, and then I pick up my soprano and I start playing with him. Now the musicians are overhearing this. They come back on stage. Now We're doing a jam session
with the president.
With the president. And the Secret Service are like, we don't know what to do. We're supposed to be in the limo going to the next event. What do we do? But, you know, he's that kind of guy. He does things in his own time and on his own watch. And he wanted to play. And like I said, you know, he's playing this tenor sax after I just threw that moisture right in the mouthpiece. And I'm like, man, okay, that's trust right there. So it was a great day. It was a really great day. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, I can't go to the next question without asking you, you know, if you're for Donald Trump, if you're for Hillary Clinton. I mean, I know you're old school, so, you know, but
yeah. Do
you have a preference?
I do. And Hillary is my choice. Obviously, you know, I'm a Democrat and always have been, but I think even beyond whether you're a Democrat or Republican, I mean, it's really about getting the right person in office. And I just cannot envision Donald Trump on a daily basis in the Oval Office making decisions on behalf of our country. I can't see it. It's not in my spirit to vote for him. So it's going to be a Hillary thing for me.
Well, I second that emotion. I second that. Just based on what we've seen the whole past year or the past 24 hours, you know. Yeah,
this last week for Mr. Trump has been not the best, let's say.
Exactly. Well, moving back to the music, I know that you're from the school of Motown. I think you said something about Philly, just like that old school. How does that come out in your music, you feel?
Well, that's the music that I grew up with. I did a lot of recording sessions on the Motown label. I did a few on the Philly International label. So this music is in my blood. And, you know, when you think about Stevie Wonder and Smokey Robinson and Diana Ross and the Jacksons and all that, that's the stuff I grew up, and that was my musical nutrition during the time that I was shaping myself. So those things really play into my sound, and that's just the way I hear music. And if you listen to the music from that era, you will hear the live horns, you will hear the live strings and all that. And it's timeless music. I mean, you can pull out any one of Stevie Wonder's records and it'll sound just as fresh today as it did 20, 30 years ago, you know. So that's the kind of music we're trying to do right now. You know, I'd like you to, as young as you are, I'd like you to pick up my record 20, 30 years from now and go, you know, this stuff sounds like he just recorded last Tuesday.
Well, you know, I mean, it feels good. I was like, just listening to, I'm like, you can listen from the beginning to the end. That's what I love. You know, you don't
Thank
have to cherry pick your music. You can just let it play.
Thank you. We try to sequence it that way, so I'm glad. I'm happy to hear that. Thank you very much.
And I could see it in a film. Like this album, I could see it as the score of a film, really. You know? It's
if you have some contacts, because I'm feeling that too, you know.
Tamara, she was like, I think this could be in a movie. I was like, I was thinking the same thing, you know. So
awesome.
We was both feeling that. What advice would you give to a young musician coming up with the way things are now and just all the experience that you've had to be where you are now? What advice would you give somebody starting out?
Well, if this question was asked 20, 30 years ago, I would have said, get you a good manager, get you a good record company, get you a good entertainment lawyer. These days, I would tell them to be as hands-on with your career as you possibly can. And that's not to say that managers aren't important and lawyers aren't important, but, you know, the real core of your brand, which you're trying to create, is you. And so it's really about the artist, you know, taking the bull by the horn and saying, okay, this is the way I want my business to be done. And MC Hammer did it back in the day, you know, where he was selling his CDs or cassettes at that time, probably out of the trunk of his car. And he parlayed that into being one of the icons that he is today. You know, it's because of, like we said earlier, because of the social media, and the other platforms that we have to advertise now, YouTube and whatever else is out there. I think you have a better shot to be known, you know. And like for me, it's not an overnight success. A lot of artists go out there and they say, okay, I want this now, but it may not be now that you attain that. You know, you have to put the time in, and there's no shortcuts to music. You first have to get your respective instrument to the level that people will take note. You know, there's a lot of substandard musicians out there that have these big dreams, but they haven't done the homework with their individual instrument to say, okay, now I'm qualified to be that guy on stage or that guy making the record. So it's really about learning the creative side and being the best musician or vocalist you can be. And then at the same time, learning the business side of it fluently so that you can be more hands-on with your career.
Yeah, I mean, do you still have to like really practice your craft? I know I talked to Kirk Whalum before and he was just like, you know, I practice, you know, do you still have to put that time in to be the great Gerald Albright that we see on stage and listen to on the new CD G?
Yeah, absolutely, Quencie. And Kirk Whalum, you know, I was a fly on the wall on many of those practice sessions. You know, you'll see Kirk backstage before a concert, you know, practicing his flute or practicing scales on his horn. If you can envision a fighter preparing for a fighting match, you know, getting ready to go on the stage, you know, get in the ring. Well, we approach it the same way. You have to stay up on your instrument and make sure that everything is fluid so that you can have that very comfortable conversation with that instrument. I'm sure Kirk would say too that, you know, if we spend a week not practicing, we know it. You know, when you jump back on the horn after not, and sometimes that happens. I mean, you know, because we're wearing many hats in our career. Sometimes we have to go and do a promotional tour for a week or two where we don't play or whatever. Or if we're doing a series of master classes or something, you know, where you're not really on your instrument like you should be. Sometimes we'll come back after that week and go, man, what happened? You know, especially on flute. Flute is one of those unforgiving instruments where you have to stay on the flute to really be comfortable with it. So I'm still practicing. I still have my instruments, you know, right here in my studio that whenever I get the chance, I'm jumping on them and trying to make sure that there's no, you know, cobwebs on them. You know, we try to keep it fresh and fluid.
I mean, I think that is so important to let people know, because I think when people see great people, they just think they're great. You know, they don't factor in all of the work and the effort and the practice to stay great, you know?
Yeah.
So That's great to share. What do you want Gerald Albright's legacy to be?
Well, I'd like my legacy to be that on a consistent basis, I treated people the way they wanted to be treated. I tried to be the best family man that I could possibly be. Tried to be a gentleman, tried to have chivalry, tried to be the best musician that I could possibly be. Tried to give my audience the best music that I could convey in whatever platform. And I was God-fearing, all of the above on that.
Oh, I love that. Well, now I have a Gerald Albright lightning round. And so all you got to do is pick one or the other. Which you feeling, which one's kind of a rapid fire kind of thing. So bass guitar or saxophone?
Saxophone.
Frankie Beverly and Mays or Bill Withers?
Oh, oh boy, you know. Only because I've been to more Frankie concerts than Bill's. I'd have to say Frankie and Mays, but that doesn't discount Bill at all, No.
Okay. Earth, Wind, and Fire or Brothers Johnson?
Oh, man. I would say Earth, Wind, and Fire. I have more of an allegiance with them because I recorded with them and also done a little touring with them as well. And I know all the guys. I would say Earth, Wind, but that's neck and neck.
I know. What inspired you for that bass guitar? I'm like, which one is going to be? Denver or Los Angeles?
Denver. This time in my life, Denver fits better for me. It's a little slower pace, cleaner air. Mm-hmm. People seem to be a little nicer. It's still a big city feel, but it has that small town flavor. And I just dig living here. I'm 11 years in, and the family loves it too.
Love that. Okay, Gompers Junior High School or Locke High School?
I would say Locke High School. Gompers was a springboard for Locke High School. Locke is where I really started to unfold as a musician, playing in jazz band, concert band, and marching band there. So I would give Locke the edge. Okay.
I want you to use one word to describe the following people. Okay. One word. Grover Washington Jr.
Master.
Patrice Rushen.
Multi-instrumentalist.
Glennis Albright.
Love of my life. Oh, one word. Oh God, how can I put it in one word? Soulmate.
Love that. Phil Collins.
Icon.
Whitney Houston.
Other icon.
Norman Brown.
Comrade.
Louis Johnson.
Mentor.
Gerald Albright.
He owes me money.
Well, I have enjoyed this interview with you. I wish you nothing but success for the new CD. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing you in concert soon, since you're probably going to be going out on the road here with this new music.
Absolutely. I mean, this is fun for me too, Quencie. I don't get a chance to do video chats very often, and this is very, very cool. I enjoyed your questions. I enjoy your spirit, and thanks to Tam as well for hooking everything up.
Studio Q Show, now you know.